Hi, my name's Evan Nielsen from Nielsen Law Group. Our subject for this segment is what to do if you owe taxes. One of the things that seems to be most stressful financially in a person's life is when you end up in a situation where you owe taxes and you can't pay them. And there are options. I think that's probably the most important thing to understand, is that there are things that can be done. So here's a couple of things to consider. The first thing that you should do when it ends up showing on your return that you owe is to make sure the return is right. In 80% of the circumstances where someone says that they owe taxes, our experience is that there are still things that can be claimed on their return that would reduce the amount of tax, or in some cases eliminate it and result in a refund. So when you see that you owe taxes on your return, don't assume that that's the stopping point. Let's take another look, and if you need to, have a tax professional look at your return to see if there isn't something else that can be done to reduce it. And if your return's already been filed, it can be amended to correct that and take advantage of whatever deductions you didn't take when you originally had the return prepared. Now let's assume that the amount that's owed is actually owed. It's as small as it can be. So one option would be what's referred to as an installment agreement. The IRS understands that if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. And so they will agree to some kind of a payment plan that's based on your discretionary income is what it's referred to, but it's your income minus your allowable expenses. And if that amount owed is less than $50,000 total, which is many circumstances, then you can actually enter into the installment agreement online. Even if the amount that's owed is over $50,000, there are still installment agreements that are available. They just have to be worked directly with the IRS. Another option would be what's referred to as an offer in compromise, and these are things that are talked about in lots of spaces of advertising or on television, or you may have heard them on cable as well. But our experience is that this is not a great option except in isolated circumstances. An offer in compromise is where you are offering to pay an amount less than the total taxes that are owed in exchange for the IRS agreeing that the total obligation is satisfied. This used to be something that was fairly common and that the IRS was willing to readily accept in many situations. But what we've seen over the last couple of years in particular is that the IRS has increased their expectations of how long someone can pay on a tax liability. So for example, if someone is 30 years old, where the IRS might have agreed to a 3-year payment plan before, now they are expecting that that individual would make payments for 10 to 15 years. And so it substantially changes and reduces the number of offer in compromises that the IRS accepts. So if you're in your senior years and have low income, an offer in compromise may be a good solution. But otherwise, it's probably not something that is going to be very helpful in terms of actually resolving the tax situation itself. Another possibility, if your income is low, no matter what your age is what's referred to as the CNC status, or currently not collectible. If you don't have the money to pay the tax debt, then there are ways of establishing this with the IRS using various forms that help them to determine that at the moment all you can afford to do is pay for the expenses that you're incurring to live, and that you don't have additional money for tax debts. This doesn't make the debt go away, it just makes the IRS leave you alone for a period of time. And so it's not something that resolves it, but it may give you some temporary relief. Now, some general comments about tax debts. The first one is when you receive correspondence from the IRS that says that you owe taxes, don't ignore it. It may be wrong and it can be corrected, or it may be right, but one way or the other you want to make sure that you respond to the IRS. Remember that when you believe initially that you owe taxes, that it's worth a second look at the tax return to make sure you've taken all of the deductions that you should, because doing so may help to resolve the situation completely without you paying anything. And then lastly, communicate with the IRS on a regular basis so that they know where things are, or use a tax professional to do so as an even better option. By doing so, you will prevent them from doing the things that they can do in the absence of communication, like placing a lien against your property, or taking the funds in your bank account, or placing a garnishment against your wages with your employer. When you stay in communication with them, they're usually much more willing to be flexible and to work with you, so long as there's some form of solution that you're talking with them about. If you have questions about any of these things, you should contact us or another tax professional, because this is an area where there are many things that can be done, but they tend to require a knowledge of the law and a knowledge of your rights as a taxpayer. Hope this information has been helpful. Would love to hear from you if this is an applicable area and you have some questions. So feel free to contact us at any time. Thanks, and we appreciate your time.